Metallica versus Bob Dylan. Now, who does that matchup? Well, the Taste Man does that matchup. I know I'm referring to myself in third person. That's all right. So we've got Metallica, or better known as the Black Album, going up against John Wesley Harding by Bob Dylan. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, at different points in my life, both of these artists were my favorite band. For a while, Metallica was my favorite band, and for a while, Bob Dylan was my favorite band. Let's start with Metallica's Black Album. It was released on August 12th, 33 years ago. I believe I did the math right on that. August 12th, 1991. However many years ago that was. And I actually walked up to Turfla Mall here in Lexington, Kentucky at midnight, and my buddy Chris Cale, who went by his birth name at the time, his birth name is Christian, and his last name I'll keep mysterious, but it doesn't sound anything like Cale. We went to Turfla Mall. I don't remember if it was Trax or Record Bar at the time, but we went to the record store there, and we bought Metallica's Metallica at midnight. And I was so excited about it that I bought two copies. I bought a copy on CD and one on cassette tape, because at the time I didn't have a mobile CD player, and who really wanted one? They were so cumbersome and full of glitches. But I needed a tape so I could listen to it on my Walkman. Now, I could have just recorded a copy, but I wanted the actual physical copy. I felt, like I owed it to Metallica, because they were probably my favorite band at the time. Maybe Slayer or Testament or something, but probably Metallica. So this album, digging back in, let me rewind a bit. When the whole 360 Albums Tourney kicked off, and I was just kind of eyeballing the 360 albums that you all and myself submitted, Metallica's Master of Puppets was one that immediately jumped out, and I was like, this could win it all. And I didn't really think the Black Album could win it all, because I've aged a bit, and I used to listen to it so much, but it sounded so refreshing listening to it this time. It's one of those albums, I've said this about other albums, and it's a hallmark that I really enjoy. Even though it's an influential album, I've not heard another album that sounds like the Metallica Black Album. Bob Rock infamously had a hand in it, but this album is influential as it is, and you listen to the Blackest List or the Blacklist or whatever, that box set that Metallica released of people doing covers of songs from this album, is terribly influential. But I've never heard another album and I'm like, oh yeah, that's parroting Metallica's self-titled album. Just haven't heard it. It's a unique sounding album, and there's no skips. My least favorite song on the album, Nothing Else Matters, may be Metallica's most popular song. I don't know, maybe one is, but I think Nothing Else Matters is their most popular song. Now, I can say I like the Chris Stapleton version better than the Metallica version. And people like to say, tell me a cover song that you like better than the original. That is one where I like the cover better than the original. Also, I'll give a shout out to the J Balvin cover reinterpretation of Nothing Else Matters. That is phenomenal. But I digress, and that's what I do. So let's get back on point. When listening to this album on the way home, my favorite song came up of Wolf and Man, and something dawned on me. That sounds like a song that Danzig could have recorded. And I know that Misfits and Danzig were very influential to Metallica. I mean, they had the Danzig and Misfits stuff on all their leather jackets back in the days, James Hetfield in the Injustice for All era with his long hair and beard. He always had a Danzig skull on something back then. And then, Misfits shirts, they wore them a lot. But this song of Wolf and Man, which, how can you not love a Metallica song about werewolves? But it sounds like it could be a Danzig song. I mean, the instrumentation is a little advanced for Danzig's bands, but the vocals definitely are influenced by Danzig, and the lyrical content sounds very Danzig worthy. So I'm talking a lot about Metallica's Black Album. You're probably thinking, Bob Dylan's John Wesley Harding doesn't have a shot in this. Well, that's where you don't know me very well. When I first started listening to Bob Dylan in my early 20s, I was living in Omaha, Nebraska. And I can't remember which Dylan album I got first. I may have gotten them simultaneously. It was either Blood on the Tracks or John Wesley Harding. I may have gotten them simultaneously from like Columbia House or BMG. Probably Columbia House, because I think Dylan was on Columbia Records. Pretty sure he was. So, and the reason why I got John Wesley Harding is because of, guess it, Jimi Hendrix. Yes, All Along the Watchtower is on John Wesley Harding. Now, for those of you who have actually listened to the album John Wesley Harding, it'll blow your mind what Jimi Hendrix did with that song, because it doesn't sound a thing like what Hendrix did with it. And this is another album that comes from outer space. I don't know what you'd call it, folk rock, alt folk, freak folk. Is this like the first freak folk album? I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of Pink Floyd and stuff that would have a claim to that. But this album, another one, I don't have a frame of reference for it still, all these years later, decades later. This album is unique. And it's like this strange gothic, or not gothic, folkish. Right, well, I'm tripping all over my tongue, aren't I? It's all right. Settle in. Most people haven't watched this far, and if you have watched this far, you appreciate the authenticity. I don't write notes out. I don't do any bullets or headlines. I'm not reading anything. I don't even know how to do that technologically. I'm just kind of looking at myself as I let it go. And I've already lost Tasteman Jr. He's walking in the house, going to check on something. So let's go back. John Wesley Harding. It's got some of my favorite Dylan songs, like Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest, Dear Landlord, and The Drifter's Escape. And I bet most of you didn't know that. That is another song that Jimi Hendrix has covered. Jimi Hendrix has covered at least 2 songs off this album. And I heard that he walked around with a notebook that had the songs from John Wesley Harding on it. Sorry about that. My nose has been itching a lot. I really have a soft spot for this Dylan album. And it's interesting because I love Dylan and Metallica so much. I don't know where either of these albums rank in my rankings of albums by each artist. It's so mood dependent. I'm so well versed in the catalogs of both these artists. Admittedly, the last few releases by both Bob Dylan and Metallica, I'm not as well versed in. It's just kind of the nature of streaming, and there's just so many other things I've been listening to more than Metallica and Dylan, because I listened to so many thousands of hours of Metallica and Dylan over my life, and that's thousand plural. I have no doubt that I've listened to at least 2,000 hours of both of these artists. So, 2 super unique albums from outer space. Which one am I advancing? This has been tough. This is another tug of war, another seesaw. This is one that my buddy Al Butter would say is kind of like comparing 2 radically different taste things. So I've got some cherry juice here because I've really been trying to keep my immune system from falling behind. And it's got over 1,000% daily vitamins, vitamin C recommendation. But it'd be like comparing this to, I don't know, tonic water, or comparing aloe vera juice to Moscato. I mean, you know, how do you compare and contrast those? I mean, I don't like either one of those, but if I were to kind of sit down, which is worse, I mean, you know, or which is better. All right. Here we go. In honor of midnight record releases with Chris Cale from August 12th, 1991, I'm going to have to advance the remarkably cleanly produced and very powerful and memorable Metallica. Now, all you folks that feel like you can't listen to anything that was released after Master of Puppets or after Ride the Lightning by Metallica, you can keep that. You can just keep that. It's just like you wanting to tell me your politics. Keep it. I don't want to hear it. like the Minor Threat song. I don't want to hear it. Advancing. And if you fast forward ahead, you don't know what's advancing. Cheers.